Today I'm going to teach you how to make this vintage shell pet collar. It was inspired by a box stitch shell pattern that I found in a vintage crochet book that was a gift to me from my Auntie M. Hi Auntie M, she watches all of my videos. I'm pretty sure she's my biggest fan. Now, I've made some modifications to turn it into a pet collar, but it's still very similar to the original stitch, and I think it's a fun one to do. At least I enjoy it. It's a quick pattern. It has 3 rows. You can see this one has 3 different colors, one for each row. This one has the same color for the first 2 rows, but not the third. Or if you like, you can make a solid color one where you don't have to switch out the yarn. I'll walk you through exactly how to make it either way, and we'll also talk about sizing so we can make sure it's a good fit for your pet. As always, I'll do my best to keep this tutorial beginner friendly. And don't forget, for your pet's safety, always make sure they're supervised while dressing them up. All right, let's get into it. So let's start by talking about sizing. The good news is we have these ties right here, which make the collar adjustable, so it doesn't need to be perfect, but pets are all different sizes, and we want to make sure you get a good fit. Our project starts with a foundation chain, which will be the inner section of our collar we'll be working row 1 into. The chain will be about the length of our pet's neck, and the number of chains that you put into the foundation chain will vary, and it might be different than mine. So, apart from the size of your pet's neck, here is what you should consider. Yarn comes in a bunch of different materials and sizes, so a thicker yarn would need fewer chains to reach the same length as a thinner yarn. This is a thicker worsted weight yarn, and it took 20 chains to get 4 inches. This is a lighter DK weight yarn, and it took 27 chains to make 4 inches. These 2 yarns are different weights, but sometimes you'll find 2 yarns that are labeled the same weight from different brands, and they'll still completely vary, so you're gonna have to play around with whatever you do. Here's an example. So this collar had a foundation chain of 85 chains, and it came out to be about 11.5 inches long. This collar had a foundation chain of 73 chains, but it came out to be about 12 inches long. So they're both worsted weight yarns, except this one took less chains and came out longer. So as you can see, there's no perfect number. You're gonna have to play around with the yarn you're working with. Okay, now let's talk about hook size. There's not too much to say on this, but bigger hooks will make bigger stitches and smaller hooks will make smaller ones. Your yarn will come with a label that will tell you which size to use with the yarn, but it's really just a suggestion. Everyone's tension is different, so go with whatever feels comfortable for you. I personally tend to size down naturally, but if I'm trying to adjust the size of a project, I'll intentionally go up or down from there. It's gonna be a little bit of trial and error to find the right length, and again, your chain length might not always match mine, but that's okay, we still start the same way. So let me show you. To get started, we're gonna wanna loosely measure our pet's neck, and I say loosely because we don't want the collar to fit too tight. You can use a tape measure, or you can just work as you go and hold your chain up to your pet. But Wrigley's neck is about 11.5 inches. He's kind of a big guy, but that's what we're working with. So for this collar, we're gonna wanna make a foundation chain that is longer than our pet's neck. Unfortunately, there's no perfect number. I think it will vary by the length of the collar and the type of yarn you use. But I think it's safe to say for a collar around Wrigley's size, we wanna make it about 2.5 to 3 inches longer than your pet's neck. So Wrigley is 11.5 inches long. So we're gonna wanna make our foundation chain to be about 14, maybe 15 inches. So usually with collars, let me show you this other one I have right here. We will work row 1 into our foundation chain. And when we put stitches into each of those chains, it might stretch our collar out to be longer than our original foundation chain. But for this collar, during row 1, we actually don't work into every single chain. So we're actually gonna skip some chains. And this will actually kind of scrunch up the collar and give us this zigzag shape we have right here. And then even when we add in row 2, it will scrunch the collar up even more. So our collar will be shorter than our original foundation chain. So this chain right here is 36 chains, and this one started as 36 chains but has row 1 in it. So you can see like how much shorter it got once we started putting in row 1. Now again, I can't be sure how much the collar will shrink for you, but for me, I've seen it shrink like 2 or 3 inches. So you can take that into consideration, and you might have to do some trial and error, but you can always pull it apart and start again. All right, let's talk about the most important part for your foundation chain. The number one rule you need to follow when making your foundation chain for this collar is the amount of chains you put into the foundation chain must be a multiple of 6 plus 1. So take any number, multiply it by 6, and then add 1. So for example, you could take the number 10, multiply it by 6, that equals 60, then add 1, which is 61, and 61 would be a good number to use for your foundation chain. This blue collar right here started with a foundation chain of 85, and this collar right here had a foundation chain of 91. So these are both made with the same exact yarn, except I did do different foundation chain lengths, and that's because I made this blue one first and it came out just under 11.5 inches, which was a little bit tight on him, and I kind of wanted to try one with a looser fit, so I added 6 because it's a multiple of 6. And I made this longer one, which might be too big. I kind of like them both. I don't know which fit I like better, but yeah, that might just be something for you to think about. All right, let's get started. Today I'm using a cotton yarn and a 4mm hook. I don't normally use cotton. I usually use acrylic or an acrylic blend, and that's definitely what I recommend. But I feel like with cotton, it's a lot easier to see the stitches on camera, so that's what I'm using. But it is a different material, so it's gonna behave differently. Like, it's kind of stiff and it doesn't have stretch like acrylic, so I'm not sure how much it's gonna shrink up after our initial chain. So this is gonna be like a little experiment, and we'll find out together as we go. So we need to start by making the foundation chain that we've been talking about. So I'm aiming for about 14 to 15 inches. So for this yarn, I'm gonna do 79 chains because I tested it before and I know it comes out to about 15 inches. You might have a different chain length than mine, and that's totally okay. So we're gonna start by making a slip knot. So I'm gonna hold the yarn like I normally do, wrap it around my pointer finger twice. I'm gonna take this back loop right here and pick it up, off, and over and put it in front of that front loop. Now this new back loop, we're gonna take it up, over, and off the finger. Then pull that tight, and we have a slip knot. I'm gonna put my hook in here and pull it tight. So now I'm gonna chain 79, and you do whichever number you're doing. So yarn over, 1, 2, 3, 77, 78, 79, 79. There I have my chain 79. It's not even gonna fit across the screen, but we need to measure it. You're just gonna have to take my word for it. So yeah, it looks like it comes out to about 15 inches, and that's what we were aiming for. So let's start with row 1. So to start, we're gonna do a double crochet into the 5th chain from the hook. So here is our first chain from the hook right there. Sometimes they can get pulled up small. Here is our 2nd chain, our 3rd chain, our 4th chain, and then our 5th chain. So we're gonna be working into this 5th chain right here. So to do a double crochet, we're gonna yarn over, and then I'm gonna go into that 5th chain. And then I'm gonna yarn over, pull through. Now you have 3 loops on the hook. I'm gonna yarn over, go through the first 2, yarn over, go through the second 2. And that is our first double crochet into the 5th chain from the hook. And then we have the chains that lined up right here. So these are gonna count as our first treble crochet or triple crochet, same thing. There's only gonna be a triple crochet at the start and the end of the first round. It's gonna be mostly double crochets, but I like having a little extra space where we can fit in the necktie. So just something to think about. But we just did our first double crochet. Now we need to do 2 more double crochets into the next 2 stitches. So let me show you. We're gonna yarn over again, and then into the next chain, yarn over, pull through, I have 3 loops on my hook, yarn over through the first 2, and then yarn over through the second 2. That's 1 double crochet. Well, technically 2. That's our second double crochet. Now we need to do 1 more. Yarn over, and then into, you can see right here we're working out of this chain, because it's, you can always tell where you're working out of because it's like pulled out, but we're gonna work into the next chain. So I already yarned over, and then go into the following chain, yarn over, pull through, then yarn over through the 2 loops, and then yarn over through the next 2 loops. There we go, we have 3 double crochets that we just made. Now we're gonna get to the part where we skip over some chains. So we're gonna skip the next 2 chains. So we have these 2 chains right here, and we're gonna work into the 3rd one right here. So skip 1, 2, and then we're gonna do a slip stitch into this 3rd one right here. So I'm skipping over those 2, into the 3rd one, yarn over, pull through the loop, and then pull through the loop because it's just a slip stitch. And there we go, we just completed our first shell, which is these little things across the top. We're gonna keep repeating that all the way down. But technically this one started a little bit different because we came off the foundation chain. So the next shell we're gonna make is gonna be what we're gonna repeat down the chain. So let me show you. We're gonna start our shell by chaining 2, 1, 2, and then we're gonna do 3 double crochets. So yarn over, and then into this next chain right here after the one we slip stitched, yarn over, pull through, 3 loops on your hook, yarn over through the first 2, yarn over through the next 2. So that's 1 double crochet. We're gonna do another one into the next chain, yarn over, into the following chain, yarn over, pull through, 3 loops on your hook, yarn over through the first 2, yarn over through the second 2. All right, we got 1 more to do. So yarn over into the next chain, yarn over, pull through, yarn over through the first 2, yarn over through the next 2, and that's 3 double crochets. Now we're at the part where we skip 2 chains again. So 1, 2, and I'm gonna slip stitch into that 3rd chain. Make sure that you actually skip 2 chains because we want to make sure we have the right amount of chains when we get to the end. So, but that's it. That is a complete shell, and we're just gonna keep repeating this all the way down to the end. So I'll show you one more time. So chain 2, 1, 2, and then 3 double crochets. Yarn over into the next chain, yarn over, pull through, yarn over through the first 2 loops, yarn over through the next 2 loops. Now we have 2 more, yarn over into the next stitch, yarn over, pull through, I should say chain, yarn over through the first 2, yarn over through the next 2, and then 1 more double crochet, so yarn over into the next chain, yarn over, pull through, 3 loops on your hook, yarn over through the first 2, yarn over through the next 2. Now we're gonna skip 2 chains again and slip stitch into the 3rd chain. And there we go, we have 3 shells. So you're gonna keep repeating this pattern all the way down, and I'm gonna pause the camera and meet you when we get closer to the end, and I'll show you how we finish off this row. So just keep going with your shells. I'll see you in a second. So I'm back and I'm almost done with row 1. I have just completed a shell and I have 3 chains left. So you should always end with 3 chains. If you don't, if you have more or less, I would just go back and double check your work, see if you added an extra stitch or maybe you didn't skip 2 chains when you needed to. End it on 3 chains so we can do half of a shell. So we just want to do our 3 double crochets right here, except this last one is actually going to be a treble or triple crochet. So let's start our half shell. We'll chain 2, 1, 2, and then a double crochet. This tail out of the way. And then 1 more double crochet. And then the very last chain, a triple crochet. Yarn over twice, and then into the last chain, yarn over, pull through. You should have 4 loops on your hook. Yarn over through the first 2, yarn over through the next 2, and then yarn over through the last 2. And there we go. Now we have our triple or triple crochet. And to be honest, if you do a double crochet here, it's not the end of the world. I honestly have done that a few times on accident, but it just gives us a little bit more space for when we add in this necktie. That is the end of row 1. Let's measure it and see how much it has shrunk down. Oh, see, look, it fits on the screen now. Wow, that was at 15 inches and now it is at 12. And I feel like you just gotta believe me, it was at 15 before. I feel like I'm cheating you because you didn't see the other end, but this, I should have raised the camera higher. Wow, already down to 12. So it's probably gonna shrink a little bit more once we get into row 2, but then that should be it. So I think it should fit wriggly. We'll see, knock on wood. Now, we just finished row 1, so your hook's over here, and we need to turn our piece. So we're gonna turn it like a page in the book, in a book, I don't know what book. And now we're gonna work down this side of the collar. So row 2, we have some options here. You can either change out your color or you can keep working with the same color. This collar right here has rows 1 and 2 with the same color. This one has row 2 with a different color. So I'm gonna change out the color for row 2, but I'm gonna explain how you keep working with the same color if you want to, so you can do it either way. So before we get into row 2, I kind of want to talk about it a little bit so you have some context, but we're going to be mostly working into our chain 2 spaces. It's the chain 2 that we did when we started the shell, and now we're looking at it backwards. So here's our treble crochet, our double crochet, our double crochet, and then that was the chain 2. So we're going to be working into that space right there. I'm going to show you on an actual shell because that was like our funky half shell. So we're looking at this backwards. Here's the 2 chains we skipped over. Here's a double crochet, a double crochet, a double crochet. That was our chain 2 to start the shell. And we're gonna be working into that space right in between. This is the space we're aiming for right now. I'm hopping in here from the future to show you how to start row 2 with this mini collar. I filmed it before and it just was too much at once, way too confusing. So now I'm back filming to cleanly show you 3 different ways to start row 2. The first way will be continuing working with the same yarn, and then there's gonna be 2 options for changing out your yarn color. I'm using this mini collar right here that followed the same instructions for row 1. It's just shorter. That way I save some yarn and I don't have to start from scratch, but I only need to show you this much right here. So watch the 3 ways I'm about to show you, and then you can decide how you want to move forward, and then we'll jump back in with the original collar. Okay, let's do this. So I'm gonna start by showing you how to continue working with the same yarn. So we just finished row 1 and we've turned our piece, and we'll be working this way down the collar. And we wanna make our way into those spaces I called out, the chain 2 spaces at the beginning of each shell. So we're gonna be trying to get in between this chain 2 space right here and this double crochet right in between right there. But first we have to make our way over there, and we are going to slip stitch across the last 3 stitches we did from row 1. So these stitches right here, 1, 2, 3, treble crochet, double crochet, double crochet. We're gonna just go ahead and put slip stitches into them. The first one's a little bit hard because we're turning, but you should be able to do it. So that's 1, into the next stitch, another slip stitch, 2, and then into the next stitch, another slip stitch, 3. There we go. We have just worked across the 3 stitches, treble crochet, double crochet, double crochet, and there's that chain 2 space. So now we're gonna do one more slip stitch into that space between this double crochet and that chain 2. So we're just gonna go in between and slip stitch. There we go, we've made it to that space. You can see it more now that we've put a slip stitch into it. So to start, we're gonna do chain 2. And there we go, that's it. You can wait right here if you're working with the same yarn, and you'll be ready to go when we jump back into the pattern. But first, I gotta show people how to change colors. So now I'm gonna show you the second way to start row 2, and your first option for changing colors, and what I think might be the better option. So we've just finished row 1, and we've turned, and we'll be working this way down the collar. And we're actually gonna just fasten off and cut the yarn right here. So you could even do this before you turn, but we've already turned. So chain 1, and then leave a little bit of yarn so you can sew the ends in easier later. Cut the yarn and pull it through. And pull that tight. And now we are finished with that yarn. So now we need to add our new color. So we're gonna start by taking our new color and making a slip knot. So I'm gonna wrap it around my finger twice. This back loop up in front, and this new back loop up, over, and off. And now we have a little slip knot. Okay, so I'm gonna put this to the side, and I'm gonna grab our collar. So we wanna hold it like we were just holding it. We have just finished, this was our last treble crochet right here, and then we cut this yarn off. And so we're gonna keep working right here, but we get to skip over these stitches and go right for that space I've been talking about, the chain 2 at the start of each shell, but we're going for this first one right here. And we're just gonna go, can you see? Right in between, and put the hook in. Now we're gonna grab our yarn, put it around the hook and pull tight. And then we're gonna pull that through the loop. And we're gonna chain 1. And now our new yarn is attached. So we're starting this row with a chain 2, and we just did a chain 1. So I'm gonna do one more, so we have our chain 2. However, if you're working with acrylic, sometimes that chain 1 to attach the yarn gets really squished up tight and you can't even really see it. So feel free to do a third chain just to give it some length and kind of cheat, but this cotton for some reason really shows those stitches well, so I'm just gonna stick with 2. Doesn't really matter, you just wanna get some height there. That's it. Now we have finished our chain 2, and we are ready to jump back into the original crochet pattern. But first, I'm gonna show you one more way to change the colors. It might not be better, but it's how I do it with my other collars, so let me show you. Now here's the third way to start row 2 and your second option for changing colors. It's pretty much just a combination of the last 2 ways I showed you. So we're gonna start the same way we started the same yarn one, and we're gonna try to bring the yarn over by slip stitching into the last 3 stitches we did of row 1 and working our way into that space between the chain 2 and our double crochet right in between there. We're doing slip stitches into. This first one's kind of tricky because we're turning, but you got it, I got it. There we go. That's 1 slip stitch into the treble crochet. Now I'm gonna do another slip stitch into the next stitch. And then another slip stitch into the next stitch. So that's 3 slip stitches. So you could technically cut the yarn and fasten off right here, but I'm gonna do one more slip stitch into that chain 2 space between this last double crochet and this chain 2, the space we've been talking about, and go right here and do a slip stitch, because that's what I did in the original collar. And then I'm gonna fasten off and cut the yarn right here. So I'm gonna do a chain 1. And then we're gonna cut the yarn, and you wanna leave a little bit of a tail so it's easier for when you sew it in later, but I'm gonna make mine extra long just because I need to. Don't worry about it, you don't need to do it this long, but cut your yarn and then pull this through. So now we have finished our first color. We need to attach the new yarn. And I'm gonna start by doing a slip knot, just like earlier. I'm gonna put this to the side and pick this back up and make sure that I'm going the same way we were just working. So we were at this end and we're gonna work that way. And we wanna go into that space between the chain 2 and the double crochet that I keep talking about. I'm gonna put my hook through that. And now I'm gonna put the yarn on the hook and pull it tight. I'm gonna pull it through and do a chain 1. And then I'm gonna do one more chain. And then, like I mentioned before, you can add an extra chain if you want to, but we are back at our chain 2 spot, just like before, and now we're ready to go back into the pattern. One thing I wanna mention for changing colors, the reason option 1 was better is because when we add these slip stitches into this section, it makes it a little bit thicker, and it's a little bit wider than the front of the other side. So here's the front of the collar, and you see this side is a little bit more narrow than this side because this one has those extra slip stitches in it. So it's just a little uneven. It really doesn't matter, it's just a pet collar, and you probably wouldn't notice if I didn't call it out. But I'm being a perfectionist, so I wanted to show you 2 different ways to do it. So now you can decide. I've clearly always done it this way, and it doesn't matter. All right, so now I've shown you all 3 ways. Now we're ready to jump back into the original collar. So decide which way you want to do it, and then we're going to start right after that chain 2. Let's do it. So now we're at the exact same spot where I left off, and we are just going to keep moving forward now. Now I'm going to do 3 double crochets into that chain space. It's getting nice and big now so you can kind of see it, but so to do that, I'm gonna yarn over and then into that chain space right here. Yarn over, pull through. Yarn over through the first 2, yarn over through the next 2. Then I'm gonna do, 2 more double crochets right into that same chain space. So yarn over into that space. It's getting really big and stretched out now. Yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through, and then 1 more into that chain space. So yarn over into that space, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through. Great. Now we have 3 double crochets in our chain 2 right in there. So now that we have that little bundle, we are actually gonna move over and work into the next chain 2 space. So here is the shell from before. We have our 3 double crochets, and there is our chain 2 space right there. So I'm gonna just go in there and do a slip stitch. And I'll kind of pull our little bundle we made over right here. And now I'm just gonna keep repeating that. I am going to chain 2 and repeat doing 3 double crochets into that space. So yarn over into this space, yarn over, pull through. 1, 2, all into that same space right there, and then 3 into that same space. So we got our little bundle of chain 2 and 3 double crochets. Now I need to pull it over to the start of this shell. So right here in between the chain 2 and the first double crochet, I'm going to do a slip stitch. And that pulls it down. Should I show you one more time? Why not? Okay, so I'm gonna keep repeating that shell. So chain 2, and then do 3 double crochets into the same space right here. Yarn over into that space, yarn over, pull through, 1 double crochet into the same space, 2 double crochets, 3 double crochets. So we need to bring this bundle down right now. So I'm gonna go right into the front of the shell right here, in between the chain 2 and the first double crochet. Technically we're looking backwards, so it's the last, but I'm thinking about how we made the shells. So attach into that space right there. So I'm gonna keep doing this, repeat this all the way down the shell. I'm gonna pause the camera and jump ahead, but don't worry, I'll be back before we finish row 2 and show you what to do. I'm back, and you can see I've finished most of row 2, and now I have 2 left. So I'm gonna do the same as before, chain 2, and then yarn over and do 3 double crochets. Going a little bit faster now, but hopefully you saw how to do this earlier. You can always go back and watch again. And then, just as we've been doing, working into that chain 2 space at the front of this shell right here. We have 2 left. Now, the original vintage pattern does have you working into this one right here, but for the collar, we are gonna do something a little bit different. So we're gonna start like we're working into that chain space right here, but I'll stop you before we do. We do wanna have one more little shell bundle though. So chain 2, and then we're gonna do the 3 double crochets into that chain space right there, same as before. I probably started this return a little bit early, but you get to see me do more stitches, so I hope you enjoy that. Okay, so, and I should be working into the space right here, but we're not. We are actually going to chain 1, and then we're going to bring the collar down somewhere right here. It doesn't really matter where, but I sometimes go for this first treble crochet right here. So you can see the top of the stitches, there's 1, 2, 3. I kind of just go into that, the closest one to me, and just slip stitch. And it's a little, we're cheating a little bit here, but we don't want it going all the way to the end. But by doing that, it does bring this shell kind of down to kind of fit like the rest of them. And that's it, we're done with row 2. Now on to row 3. Now we're ready for row 3, and we have to decide again if you want to change your yarn color or if you want to keep it the same. Luckily this time there's only one option for each, so it should be less complicated. But I am going to change my yarn color, but first I'll show you what to do if you're not changing your color. So I'll come back to this starting point right here if you're changing your color, but bear with me. So first we have to turn our piece and chain 2, 1, 2, and then we're gonna keep working like this. You could probably guess the next steps. We're gonna do a double crochet, but I'm not gonna get ahead of myself. So if you're not changing your color, just wait here. I'm gonna go back and show people how to change their color, and then I'll meet you at this chain 2. So bear with me. Okay, I'm gonna go back here. I just didn't wanna get too twisted when I undo that chain and flip it around. Okay, we're back again. We just finished row 2, and we need to change yarn colors. So I'm gonna chain 1 just because I like having that little extra knot for security. Grab my scissors. I'm gonna cut my yarn and pull it through. And pull that tight. There we go. Now I'm gonna flip it over because we're gonna be working this way. And I need to decide which color I'm gonna do. Hold on. Okay, so I have this green, and we're gonna start like before, where we're gonna make a slip knot. So around the finger twice. So now I have my slip knot, but first we need to put our hook through the collar. You can see right here was that chain 1 we made, and then where we attached right here. But I'm actually gonna go into that chain 1 space. I'm gonna treat it like I was treating those chain 2 spaces before. So I'm gonna just go right into there and then put the loop on my hook. Try to pick up the yarn so I can work with it. And then I'm gonna pull it all the way through and do a chain 1. So just like before, we need to start with a chain 2, and we just did that chain 1 to attach the yarn. So I'm gonna do one more chain, so we have a chain 2. And like I mentioned before, if that first chain was really small, you can even do another one if you want, but that's it. Now we are at the same spot where I left the people who are using the same color. So we're all gonna keep moving forward together. So this is very similar to the last round, but now for row 3, instead of doing 3 double crochets into the spaces, we're gonna be doing 4 double crochets into the spaces. So let's do 4 double crochets into that same space. So yarn over, I'm working into that same space, the chain 1 space that we just attached our yarn or worked into. Yarn over, pull through. We're doing double crochet. That's 1. Yarn over into that same space. 2. A 3rd double crochet into that same space. It kind of turns when I go into it, I'm sorry. It's that same, it gets bigger and bigger as you work into it, but that same space right here. So I did 3, and now I gotta do that extra 4th one. This extra double crochet into the round kind of increases this row, so it sits a little bit nicer around their neck. There we go, we have our bundle of a chain 2 and 4 double crochets into that chain 1 space that we ended on. That's the only part that's a little bit different, but now we're gonna keep doing the same thing as before. So we have, let me try and stretch them out a little bit. We have our shell from the last round. There's the 1, 2, 3 double crochets, and then there's that chain 2 space that we're working into. So basically just the front of the shell. So you already know what to do. We're gonna go in there and slip stitch. And that brings it forward just like before. Now we're gonna chain 2. And then put 4 double crochets into that same space. 1. I'm ahead of myself, I didn't finish it yet. There's 1 into that same space. 2. 3. And then our last one. 4. So chain 2 and 4 double crochets all into that same chain space. Now we need to bring this shell over and find the next shell from row 2, which is right here, and we're going to work into the beginning of it. We have our 1, 2, 3 double crochets, and then we're working into the space between this chain 2 and that double crochet. So right in between, I'm going to do a slip stitch. There we go, we brought it over. So we're just going to keep repeating that down. So chain 2, 4 double crochets into the same space right here. So I'm going to pause the camera and keep working, but you keep repeating this all the way down, and I'll see you at the end of row 3. Wow. So I'm back and I'm almost done with row 3. I just finished this bundle of 4 double crochets in a chain 2. Now we're coming to the very end right here. You'll see we have 1 shell from row 2 and 1 half shell from row 1. So we're gonna keep working into row 2 like we just were. So we're doing the same thing still. I'm gonna find that space that we're working into at the front, that little chain 2 space in between that first double crochet, and I'm gonna slip stitch just like normal. And then we're gonna chain 2. 1, 2. And then keep working like normal with those 4 double crochets into that same space. Maybe we'll go a little faster now because we've seen it. I'm just doing what I'm doing earlier, working 4 double crochets into that same space. We finished our last bundle of 4 double crochets and a chain 2. Now we need to bring this down. And it doesn't really matter where you bring it down. I don't bring it to the end over here. I bring it somewhere like right here. It might be kind of tricky because if you put those slip stitches in the beginning of row 2, but you can just really work it anywhere. Try to aim for like right here, like I said. So let's just get a slip stitch in here somewhere. So I'm gonna go into that space right like here. Like I said, it's a little tricky because of those slip stitches I added in, but you might not have them. And then I'm gonna just pull through to attach that shell down right here. And then just like before, I'm gonna chain 1 and cut the yarn. Pull through and pull tight. There we go, we're almost done. Oh, but let's measure it. Let's see how long it came out. You technically should do this after row 2 if you're worried about sizing, but I wasn't really worried. I'll set a reminder in the text, but let's see how long it came out. Yeah, look, it got even shorter after we added row 2. I don't think row 3 makes a big difference, but it shrunk even more. So I think we're like a little bit over 12 inches and now we're just under 12 inches. It's kind of hard to see with the camera angles, but it did shrink a teeny bit, not too much. So there you go. I think it will fit Wrigley. But we're not done quite yet. We need to sew in these loose ends, which is like my least favorite part. So I want to take a quick moment to talk about the front side of the collar versus the back side. Again, this is just a pet collar. It doesn't really matter too much, but stitches do have fronts and back sides to them. So I do think there is a way the collar looks better when the front side's facing. And I'll be referencing the front and the back for when we put the necktie in. And then for when we sew in the loose ends, you want them mostly on the back side in case they pop out. The front side would be when row 1 and row 3 are facing the correct direction. Technically row 2 will be backwards, but it's always kind of got to be that way. So to check, I would always look at row 3. It's probably the easiest to see. So this is the front side of row 3. And then this is what the back side looks like. Let me show you on a different one. This is the front side of row 3, this light green right here, versus the back side. Front side of row 3 versus the back side. So that's pretty much it, just something to take into consideration when moving forward, but if you don't care, it doesn't really matter. Oh look, and this is the back side. There we go, here's the front. Again, only matters for the tie and the loose ends, but let's jump back into it. All right, so grab a needle and just start somewhere and thread it. And then I just take the needle and sew it back into the collar. And I usually try to keep the colors together. So this turquoise one, I'll keep it in the turquoise row. I kind of just do this as quick as possible. And sometimes they fall out, but it's not the end of the world. And then just keep going with each color all the way around. This is a lot easier to do with fuzzy acrylic. I absolutely hate this part. Also, something I forgot to mention, that if ends are near each other, even while I'm working in the active rounds, sometimes I'll just tie them together in a little knot just for extra security. Because why not? It's probably not necessary. But when I do tie them in a knot, I like to make sure that the knots are showing at all. I want to make sure that's like on the back side. Again, see how these ends are all poking out the back side, just so I don't have to worry about them spilling out the front. There we go. Good riddance. We got rid of all of those loose ends and we have our collar. Now we just need to do the necktie. So the neckties are pretty much a shell at each end and then chains. The amount of chains you make, of course, will vary like we talked about before, depending on the yarn and just how long you want to make it. But there's no specific math you need to do to it. This one, I think, had like around 60 chains. This one, probably around 70. I don't even usually count. I kind of just go on a vibe, but people ask me sometimes, so I counted this time. I don't even know the exact numbers, but let's see. This one came out to like 9.5 inches, and this one's a little bit longer, almost 11. So that's what you can go off of. You just want it long enough so you can tie it in a bow or not, or however you want to tie it. But let me show you how to make it. So we're making a chain, so we're gonna start with a slip knot. So hold the yarn and wrap it around your pointer finger twice. Pick this back loop and put it in front. Take this new back loop up, off, and over your finger and pull it tight. The longer tail you have right here makes it easier to sew in later, by the way. So don't make it too short. So I'm gonna start by chaining 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I have my chain 4, and now I'm gonna work a double crochet into that first chain right there. So yarn over into that first chain, yarn over, pull through, and we have 3 loops on the hook. Yarn over through the first 2, yarn over through the second 2. Now I'm actually going to do 3 more double crochets into that same chain space for a total of 4, but I'm kind of back and forth about it. You could do 2 more for a total of 3, but I'm gonna do a total of 4 and see how it looks. So we just did 1 double crochet. I'm gonna do another double crochet into that same first chain space. And then yarn over, pull through the first 2 loops, yarn over through the next 2 loops. And there we go, there's 2 double crochets, so I got another one to do. Now into that same first chain, it's gonna get all stretched out. And now I got 3, so 1 more into that same first chain. And there we go. We have our chain 2 and 4 double crochets to make that shell. Again, I probably could have done 3, but it's up to you. Now I need to bring this back down here. You see how we have our little shell? So instead of working into this space right there, you probably could, but I like kind of taking it into one of these, the first chain right here. Can you see that? This was our first chain, so I just kind of want to bring it over. So I'm gonna start by chaining 2 so we can reach it. 1, 2. So I'm gonna bring this over and I'm gonna do a slip stitch into that first chain right there. Or honestly, wherever you can get it into, to be honest. And close it up. And there you go. So now we have our little shell created. Now we need to just start doing some chains to get this part right here. Again, you can do however many you want. I did like 60 and 70 before. I think with this yarn, I might try 50 and see how long it gets. Okay, I'm gonna start chaining. So 1, 2, 36, 37, 38, 39, 50. There's 50. Let's see how long this is. So about 8.5 inches. Let's just do 55. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. A little bit of wiggle room. There we go. So I got 55 chains apart from our shell. Now we need to do the second shell. So we're gonna do it similar to before. So we're gonna be working all into the same chain, and it's gonna be this one right here. So the last one we just made, the 55th chain. So now you'll probably have a different number. So now I'm gonna chain 3. 1, 2, 3. So I have those 3 chains and that 4th one right here, which was our last 55th chain. I am gonna skip over these 1, 2, 3 chains and do a double crochet into that 4th chain. Okay. So there you go. You can kind of see there's my side chains and then my double crochet right here. Now you know what to do. We're gonna do, 3 more for a total of 4. So back into that same space right here that we just worked into. So yarn over into that same space. It's gonna get all stretched out. Here's 2 double crochets and then another one. I'll show you into that same space. 3, it's getting pretty big, into that same space, 4. Okay, there we go. We have our 4 double crochets in our chain, and now we need to close off the shell and bring this down. So I'm gonna chain 2, 1, 2, and then I'm gonna do the same thing as before. Here's the big chain we've been working into that's all stretched out. I'm gonna go to the side of it to find those original chains and just kind of slip stitch into there somewhere. Honestly, wherever you can get it. We're just trying to close up that big hole a little bit, but there we go. And there you go. I might do a chain 1 to fasten off and then cut the yarn and pull through. We're almost done. We have to do my favorite part. We have to sew in these loose ends. Yay. But I do, when doing these, you just kind of tuck them in wherever you can go. You still have that hole a little bit. I try to cover it up with the ends. But yeah, just sew them in and then we should be good. All right, once you feel good about that, we want to snip off these ends. And there we go. We have the necktie. Let's put it into our collar. Let's put this into our collar. So here's the front side up. I'm gonna go to the row 1 where we have that treble crochet and that double crochet, and we're gonna push it through the space in between both of those. So I'm gonna take this, and the front side is facing us, come underneath and through that space. It's kind of hard with the cotton, it's so stiff, and pull it up. So it's coming out the top front side and going through the bottom, there's the back side. We have that. I'm gonna flip this around, and here's the back side because it's the inside, and bring the front matching side. And we're gonna do the same thing on here. We're gonna find that space in between the double crochet and the treble crochet at the front right there, and I'm gonna go from under up to the top. Kind of squeeze it through. There we go. It's a little tough, but once it's in, it's in. Now we have our collar, and we can pull this tight. It's coming up at the front, and I can just tie it like this, or however you want to tie it. But there we go. We did it. Now you know how to make this adorable vintage inspired collar. If you want to learn how to make the original vintage stitch, I'm gonna make a video tutorial on that too. But yeah, hopefully this video was easy to follow. If you have any questions, leave a comment. I'm here to help. But thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.